Today's date is March 31st. With me is Ron Hamilton of the Union Fire Company. And Ron, we have your permission to tape?
Absolutely.
Okay. Just a couple of background questions. Your age?
66.
Okay. I didn't know if we'd
It's
have
okay.
to cue you on that or not. But,
I hope not.
What did you do for a living? What was your career?
Varied. Started out in construction. Did various parts of construction, engineering, and then I was fortunate enough to go to work for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I was hired as a construction inspector. And while I was there, went to Harrisburg area community, Harrisburg Area Center for Higher Education. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's on North Front Street. Anyway,
Mhm.
and I got a lot of engineering knowledge because most of the people where I work were engineers. So I worked towards that, and eventually I was awarded an engineer rating with the state.
Oh,
Even though I didn't have a degree in it, but they gave it to me because of the background and everything I had worked at for several years.
Okay, interesting.
But then I was there for 35 years at the Commonwealth.
Okay, and retired some years back?
Retired, yep, about 2000.
Okay, and you're currently a fire chief in South Middleton Township?
Right.
As well as a supervisor?
Correct.
Okay, and how long have you been supervisor?
A short time. I took over for an unexpired term for a supervisor that left, Ron Reeder.
Mhm.
He left to take another job in another county, and he was a supervisor. And there was a year and a half left on his term, and I was appointed. I applied and was appointed to that term. And I've just finished my first year of my 6-year term after being elected 2 years ago with the township.
Okay.
And so it's a 6-year term.
Okay. Are you, the Union Fire Company's in Carlisle, are you from Carlisle originally, or?
Yeah, from the Carlisle area. Lived, born and raised in Boiling Springs. Well, I was born in Mechanicsburg, but lived in Boiling Springs. Moved out of Boiling Springs for a short time, into Carlisle, then to North Middleton, then back to Boiling Springs.
Okay, okay.
And we were away for about 9 years, but the rest of the time we were in South Middleton Township.
Okay, and when did you join the Union Fire Company?
In I don't have my card because I lost it. It's either 69 or 70.
Okay, okay. And how did you come to join the fire company?
The guys I ran around with were members, Mike Spidel and some other guys like that, and they were members. They slept in at the firehouse, and Mike France, and became interested. And just through their initiative, in those days, there wasn't a whole lot going on around, and you congregated with people that had likes that were similar to mine.
Okay.
And they were mine, and I just kind of evolved into, I was never a super firefighter, but I liked doing what we were doing, helping people.
Okay. And they were members and just kind of got you involved
Yeah,
through the friendship?
Yeah, through just mutual meeting places and stuff like that where we gathered together.
Okay.
We got talking about it, and we could use some help. So that's kind of how it evolved.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And how active would you say you were in the fire company?
Initially, not really very much. Did some work helping build a new building, did some of that. And I served in a lot of roles over the years. I was a president, I was a trustee, I was an assistant chief, and then in the late 90s, late 80s, I was a fire chief for like 9 years or so. But I became much more involved at the end than I was initially. Initially, we had younger children and didn't have quite the time. But as the children grew older, I got more time and was able to do that and was really interested in it.
Okay, okay. And it sounds like you served in quite a variety of positions.
Yeah, just about all of them.
What led you to do that? How did you get into
I started as a trustee because I guess, I don't know, I was there and nobody else was willing to do it, so I said, I'll give it a try. And it was a lot of headaches. You had to deal with the building. You had to deal, at the time, we dealt with the live-ins that slept into the building. Unless the fire siren took off, they were our responsibility more than they were the fire chiefs. And the whole thing, dealing with any building construction, anything new, furnaces, anything at all with the building, and trying to keep it where it is today. That was kind of fun. It kind of fell into my background when I was in construction.
Okay. And you were involved in the addition in the 1970s
Yes.
when that was?
Yes.
Okay.
Lee Brocker was president then, but yeah, very involved. It was a pretty good effort.
Did you ever live in a firehouse?
I've slept there, but never. It was only on a part-time basis. I never moved in.
Okay.
I always had a bed at home and stayed there.
Right.
Yeah.
Understood. So,
Yeah.
what was it like around the firehouse when you were active? And I imagine that changed over time, but.
Oh, it did. It was a learning experience when we first got there. There was guys like, now I can't say his last name, John. He was a trustee, and we would sit and listen to him for hours, just because we would talk when we were allowed to talk, and we earned everything we received. You went by what they told you, and it was kind of different and enjoyable, and everybody went along. There was no question, and it just a day in there was, and usually it was only in the weekends or maybe in the evenings I'd go in. It was just, we would be doing duties around the firehouse and just hanging out most of the time.
Okay, and that was in the early years?
In the earlier, yeah, and then as it moved on, it got more involved because I took different positions, but it got more involved as we got older, I guess, or as we stayed and got more varied positions. Meetings would start happening, and you'd have to attend meetings for all kinds of stuff within the company and the firehouse to get things done. And as it moved further, then the meetings expanded out, and the responsibilities came as you took the various positions. You took on responsibilities, financial, whatever. I was never the financial person, but I did vice president and president. But you had to know where the money was coming in and where it was going to make sure it got there. But I'm not sure exactly. It was just the longer you're there and the more involved you get, the much busier it was.
Okay.
If that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, and whether there were any changes over the years in terms of the attitudes or the activities?
There were. Oh, yeah, both. I mean, as the years went on, we got less and less volunteers, and we got less and less younger people. Back in those days, people didn't necessarily have to be real young to come in there. They were looking for a place to hang out. And that was, it was a nice group. We had people from Perry County coming over, spending time from all over the place. We had people from all over because we were fortunate. We ran a lot of calls. We had both a rural and a contract in the borough. And it just became much more active and things to do. But as we got, the longer it went, the older members moved out or got girlfriends and moved away, and it was tougher and tougher. You had to rely more and more on fewer people. And as that evolved, then you would call in more outside companies to help you fight fires and stuff like that. But around the station, you had the same groups more or less, but they didn't change a whole lot. It's tough. I wasn't there every day, but until later. But even later, we had to fight to get people. We really had to go out and try to go to the schools and stuff like that to get people to volunteer to come out, because the longer it goes, now there's more things to do. In those days, there wasn't nearly as much to do, and you would rely on those other things now to take up your time, your families, these outside activities, and it's becoming much more difficult to have volunteers.
Did the training change?
Oh, much so. Yeah, I didn't get it. Yes, it did, and in the old days we didn't even believe in air packs. There were a few around. Some of them were just old filtered packs that you put on to keep some of the smoke out. It couldn't keep all of it. And yeah, we didn't use them. It's surprising there's not more deaths because of cancer and the stuff we inhaled, because you were a tough guy if you could go in and leather lung it and come back out. And now you think, well, how stupid were we? But the training changed dramatically. From the gear we had all had just boots and very, very light gear, helmets that probably weren't, I know they aren't nearly as safe as they are today. We had gloves that you would get burnt if you would get steam inside. They call them red balls. But then it evolved. Everything, you go into leather, the gloves and the shoes and the helmets and everything to protect you more. The technology changed a lot, and it's still changing. I just was some classes recently about tactics and dynamics of fire, and they're now saying to do things differently than we used to go in from the unburned side and push the fire back out to where it was burnt, but now they're saying don't do that. There's other methods. But everything changed, especially the apparatus changed. It didn't change a lot, but it changed what they carry. One piece now carries a little bit of everything, tools for entrapment and all kinds. And it just, in those days, we didn't have the jaws of life way back when, but we would use whatever we had to get in and get the people out, usually saws or whatever, and in the entrapment end of it. But much more technical these days with better equipment, better nozzles, better everything, better knowledge of the fires. It's evolving every day.
Do you think that's contributed to maybe the difficulty to get people to stay or become involved, or?
I don't know. I'd say the training is absolutely. That's the biggest holdback for people, that they're required now by various, and the states, they got to cover their backsides. I understand that, by requiring training, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's a position that some of these people don't want to put themselves into. 200 hours, to be a firefighter one or whatever it is, probably more than that, and it's more than people want to contribute to. In those days, we did have training. We had this and that, but then we had a couple people come to town and show us how to do certain things, and it was crazy. But not nearly what they have today. There's many more instructors, classes online, the whole deal. And to do anything anymore, you have to have it written to be able to go in the building, to do anything, where in those days we didn't have to. So that contributes a lot to the volunteers not willing to continue.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. What do you enjoy most from your time in the fire company?
Camaraderie.
Okay.
Coming in and your friends are there, And then on weekends we'd usually go out and have a few beers, when we were all close to 21 and above. And but it was just, that, and if going out and helping somebody. I was never fortunate enough to save a life, but we saved a lot of property, and we're able to help people. Especially fire departments are called for everything. I don't care what it is. That's the first call they make, and whether we can help them or not, we show up, and we try to. But because nobody else is going to thank you. You get that internally from self-satisfaction and the people around you. It's the camaraderie. That's big in my book.
Okay. Was there anything you didn't enjoy? Anything that?
No, probably the time away from family. You didn't think about it at the time, but when you come back, you're looking, you say, hey, these kids grew up and I wasn't even here. And to me, that wasn't too bad, but the later it got, the more time I spent, I did recognize it. But my kids at that point were older, and they were going through high school, and it wasn't as critical as when they were younger. But yeah, that's probably, if there's a negative, for me, it was time away from families. My wife was very understanding. She was good, and we never had any issues. But, there were things that you could have been there at the recital, you could have been there, whatever, and we were at a meeting or at a fire or something else. They understood it, but there was a feeling there.
Okay, okay. Is there anything in your mind that sticks out as the funniest thing that happened, or a funny call or a funny situation that you remember?
There's a lot of funny stuff.
Or even a typical example?
I understand. I probably some of the stuff that I enjoyed doing, plus we had fun, so it would have been funny, was back in the day we sold Christmas trees at the firehouse, and we'd go over to Perry County and get them, and it was always a big event. We'd line up dump trucks and people and they're in trailers, and we'd all go over, and we just had one heck of a good time over there, and just the annex that everybody would get into. And then we would get back and we had some of the old members, Joe, I can't say his last name, he was a big guy, lived in a firehouse, and we'd hide behind trees and listen to him sell Christmas trees. And he was so good at it. I think he was a salesman by nature, but oh my gosh, we would just sit back there and laugh. He was selling them this scroungy little rotten tree and they bought it.
Was that Joe Fowler?
Joe Fowler.
Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't say Joe Fowler. Yeah. I couldn't say, oh my God, what a crazy guy. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of funny stuff that went on, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Any calls that were maybe the most interesting or challenging, scary?
The scariest call was the night that Martin Luther King was killed. I happened to be at the firehouse, and there was a couple, I can't remember who was there with us, but we ran a whole lot of fires, and we were very, very concerned about what was going on around us. There was a lot of people angry for obvious reasons, and I know there was weapons carried by other people. I didn't have any, just in the event of, but that was probably one of the scariest nights. I never was too frightened in a fire because I was fortunate. I got caught in a box spring one time up in an attic in my feet for a couple minutes, and the Martin Luther King and all the fires we had, that was probably my scariest night.
Okay. Any worst call? Any call you remember that kind of sticks out as really got to you? Or was
Yeah, we had a bunch of those that could fall in that category. Usually they were the fatal auto accidents. We had a couple. I know we had one on Holly Pike right out in front of Graham, Volkswagen with two ladies, and they were both killed. And that was very difficult. Actually, after that, I had gotten Tom Moriarty come in and talk to us, stress debriefing, and he was very good at that, and because we needed it, to see those kids, especially kids,
right,
and children, that hurts you the most. That, and one other time, we brought an engine back from Kennett Square, and Ralph Smith and we went down to an accident on Route 11, and a trailer had turned over on a car, and there was two kids screaming. We got the kids out, and they were screaming for their parents, and they were gone.
No.
And that just...
Yeah, and that was in the day probably before the stress debriefings.
It was. That was long before that. But it's the worst stuff.
Are there any characters or any people from the firehouse that stick out in your mind that you remember individually?
Oh, yeah, a lot of them. I'll tell you the guy I liked the most, and he was probably, he and I are probably smart level about the same. We're pretty stupid. But old Charlie Boyles, he was a fire chief for many, many, many years. And he wasn't the smartest guy around, but he was the most dedicated guy I knew. And he's the guy that you had to follow him. Well, he'd push you. And those were the days with the no air pack. And you better keep up. And you better have a line with you. Because I remember he and I were on the third floor of the Pomfret Street Apartments when it burnt. Can't remember the year, but it was in spring, and we went way up top. We had to pull a hose line up with a rope, and we couldn't get air packs, but we'd look out the window and see all these guys sitting down on the curb with air packs on. We're like, but anyway. But there's a bunch of people that did a lot of good things, but Charlie just sticks out in my mind over the years. He was there, didn't ask for a whole lot, just always showed up. But there was a lot of good people throughout the whole history of the fire company that did a lot of really good things. But he stuck out.
Okay. And you mentioned John, I think Dysart.
Yeah, John Dysart. Yeah, he was a trustee when I came in there, and just an old guy, just full of knowledge, and we would just sit and listen to him, and he'd tell us when we could get up and leave and when we could sit down, and that's the way it was, and we accepted that. But John Dysart was a super guy.
He was probably one of the last of the really old school guys.
Yeah, he was. He was. There was a couple of them would sit in there in the firehouse, and we'd go in, and John was one of them, and a lot of knowledge from a lot of years, and really looked up to him.
Anything else you remember that unique or different, or that just sticks with you? That's
Well, I mean, we were part of a special organization. We always ran a lot of calls, and a lot of people had dislike for us because of that. And but we did what we could, and we continued to do it. But I was very proud to be a part of that, and the little bit I contributed just to keep that place going was kind of satisfying. And you know that maybe the little bit you did, and my son's the fire chief there now, but they've lasted for 225 years and going, and it's just that's important.
How were the rivalries with the other companies?
They were, in the old days, they were strong.
Okay.
I don't think we ever had fist fights, but I bet it was close in some cases, and we wanted to be the first in. And if you're a firefighter, you want to be able to put out the fire before anybody else does, and be able to do the most you can, especially if there's a life involved. That was number one. You didn't care. You went in and did what you could do. But they were strong, very, very strong. But as time went on, though, they mellowed, and now the fire department has combined into basically one fire department. There's two companies that have several combinations over the years, and I think they're doing better now than they ever did without the rivalry, and it's better without it.
Okay.
That's my opinion, even though we enjoyed it at the time.
Right.
Not enjoying hating people, but just the fact that we could walk by and say, hey, we beat you in. That was just the way it was.
Did you ever get beat?
Oh, yeah. Oh, heck yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a back and forth. We never were first all the time. When we did, you made everybody know of it, though.
Right. Okay.
But, yeah, that was, yeah.
What do you see in the future of the volunteer service? Do you think it will continue, or?
I think it's a dying breed. I think eventually it's going to fade away. The people that are involved are good, but the new breed that coming out, they're going to be more concerned about other things, and I think a paid department is going to be a guarantee. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's going to happen. It's happening in our lifetime. We have the union had paid drivers forever. They were one of the first, I think, to ever have. I know they were in Carlisle and our whole area, and which really made a difference. You know, in those days, at least the rig could get out with maybe minimal manpower, but a lot would show up then from their homes. So you knew the rig was getting there with the equipment on it, and all you had to do was show up and help. Whereas today, the people are going to have to be there. There's no room to park anymore. They don't want private vehicles going to these calls because there's other issues to deal with, and it's just taken over. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but the volunteers had their place, and there still may be some. There probably will, because I see some of the guys are still coming in and they put the programs on to get these younger firefighters to come out. But I just feel it's going to be overwhelming at some point. That's my opinion.
Okay. And I know South Middleton, do they have paid drivers at
Yes.
this point?
Yes.
At the Boiling Spring Station
And at the Mount Holly.
there's now a paid driver? at
We
Mount Holly?
pay for them. We pay for them out of, South Middleton pays for everything for them,
Okay.
even the Holly station, yes.
Okay.
Now, they're not 24, they're daylight.
Okay.
The drivers are, their daylight hours. At some point, I know it'll expand.
Okay. Okay. And you've been through some regional studies and consolidation. Do you see more of that, or have we?
No, I think you'll see some more, because we even have some ideas. There's sitting in a budget situation now, which is different from when before I would submit budgets to the townships. There's just some of the buildings are getting older, and a lot of money is getting spent just to maintain those buildings, and they are maybe in towns, and maybe their members might be closer at this point, but the cost is going to be prohibitive at that point, and we're going to be looking at a new station here and there, and mainly maybe to even and do that and combine some companies to reduce costs of apparatus. We're getting requests every year for more capital funds, and we give a lot of money out to that, and we just can't continue. We can, if you want to raise taxes, and that's where do you do that? And I'm willing to do some of that, but some of the other board members aren't.
Mm-hmm.
They're thinking there's a line that we want to stay within, and most of them are business persons, and that's why. And it's good that they're there, but I think we're going to continue to do that. I can't say exactly how, but if we can build a fire station for $1 million and save replacing 3 pieces of apparatus, for example, it's worth it to us, to me, to look at it in that perspective. If we can combine a couple of stations and still be able to meet everybody's minimum response times for ISO and all that, and be able to help the communities. It's a tough call.
Okay.
It is.
But you have a unique opportunity that you've been the fire chief and the president that went to the municipality and asked for funding, and now you're an elected official. Has that changed your opinions, or does it seem different from that side now?
No, but I understand why they're coming and why they ask for more than what we usually give them. I do, because any more we've been giving them, we've been giving them just about anything they ask. But those days are getting slimmer. We're going to get less and less because the resources are less. We have a fire tax in South Middleton, and we're going to increase it this year. That's mainly for the apparatus that's planned that these people want to. Everybody has different opinions on replacement. Some companies want to keep them as long as they can and do minimal stuff to keep them running for many years. Other companies feel they want to just keep them for 10 years, get rid of them while their resale value is up. And so you got to look at that, and that bears heavy on what they're expecting to get.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we can always give them everything they want,
Mm-hmm.
but it is, and if we can, that's our goal. And I see it. I do see it happen more. I really do. Maybe, and we did when we had Restive, we did combine at least 2 stations, and but it's hard to say that what we're going to do. They were combined into one company. They weren't reduced, but I still think we need to look at some other stuff. But yes, to answer that.
Okay, great. Anything else that you want to add, or you think that's significant in the history of the union or the fire service, and anything that would be in the future?
It's moving very fast, and I don't go to the training I used to, and I probably should, because some of this stuff has really opened my eyes as to some of this stuff New York City had bought into back in 2011, and now it's just now getting out to the rest of us. And maybe we're slow to learn, and there's a lot of the older people that just don't want to change, but you have to with the new plastics, the new everything, the new construction materials. That's what's changing as much of anything as to how we fight fires. They burn faster, they burn hotter, and I just, I don't know. But that's the scary part of where we're headed.
Okay.
And they're going to continue to do that. They'll continue to make cheap stuff so they can build it quicker, and we just have to continue.
What do you think John Dysart would say today?
Oh, he'd shake his head. He'd shake his head and drink his coffee and say, I don't know. That's an interesting thought. I don't know how much fire he fought, but he knew. I mean, he sat there, he saw what happened. So, interesting thought, though. What he would probably have a lot of comments.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
So. All righty. Well, I thank you very much. Appreciate
You
it.
bet. You bet. No problem.
Yeah, that was good.